Okay, so it's 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm almost never awake this early. I actually had plans to go to sleep last night. That didn't really work out. So I'm up again. I'm just going to power through the day. And it's really interesting to kind of be aware of my process and where I am while I'm working on my NaNoWriMo novel. This is part of a series on, what the process actually looks like in real time. And I've started to notice a few things, which is one of the really important reasons why you need to make kind of a daily check-in or a schedule or a habit, because unless you're analyzing how you feel and what you do and how productive you are, you're not really going to figure out your pattern. And it's important. One of the most valuable parts of doing NaNoWriMo is just to figure out a writing pattern and a habit that can work for you, that you can stick with. So one of the things that I've really noticed personally is I really tend to avoid the stuff that I don't know. If I don't know what comes next, that's when I'm starting to feel frustrated. So this is halfway through NaNoWriMo. This is the 15th. I can start to feel like, oh no, I'm behind, I'm demotivated, I'm getting kind of tired and frustrated. So there's a little bit of a temptation to be like, let's just give up, let's go back to work and focus on other things. I'm starting to be pulled in other directions and feel like maybe that, working on this novel right now isn't the most important thing for me. But one of the ways I want to counteract that is just to realize that the process, and I'm becoming more aware of this kind of just by going through it, is that I need to sit down and map out what happens next so that I can get to the writing. So if there's the fear or the discomfort, it's probably because I don't know what happens, and that's really scary. So I know I can't just sit down and write, and maybe I feel like I owe myself a break or whatever. So I'll tell you where I am, and we'll keep going. We had the kind of last battle. That's kind of where I got to yesterday or a couple days ago, which is an important piece, but now I need to push through to the midpoint. And this is where it gets a little bit confusing, because after the final battle, or after the first battle, which is the first face-off with the antagonist, there should be forces of evil, or the gathering of the forces of evil, basically like a more clear picture of who the antagonists are and what they're really up against. And also, there should be a problem revealed. This is kind of like the next chapter, problem revealed, and then a truth and an ultimatum. So what this is basically happening is the protagonist realizes she's over her head. All of a sudden she realizes the stakes are much bigger. She was kind of, becoming more familiar, becoming maybe part of this new extraordinary world, maybe getting a feel for her powers, maybe almost starting to hope or to believe, that they had some chance of winning. And then there's a big display of force by the antagonist forces. The problem is revealed, something that was probably kept from her, something that's bigger than she expected, and then the full truth and the ultimatum. So it's like she realizes something, or someone tells her something, she goes to her allies and confronts them, and they tell her the full story, who she really is, who her parents were, what they're really up against, what the antagonists really want, all this other stuff, which gets a little bit scary. So what happens at the midpoint, and this is probably where there's a big twist or something, is that the protagonist really doubts whether or not they're committed to the mission, and then they come out with an affirmative, which means by the midpoint, for the first time, the protagonist is making deliberate choices. They're all the way in. And so the challenge I have right now is that that's basically 3 chapters. I don't know what happens in those 3 chapters. I have my protagonist facing off with Hera for the first time. There will be like a down scene after every battle scene. There's kind of like a down scene where they're just talking about what happened and making a new plan, a reactive scene. So face off with Hera, it's the first battle. She gets to talk to Isis and meet Isis for a while, who's the goddess of Egypt. She's looking for one specific thing. Isis gives her some clues, but doesn't totally answer her questions. She might be given some extra powers or weapons or something like that. And then I have this thing that I know that I want to happen. I'm not going to tell you what it is. It's kind of shocking, but this is a book 3. And I set it up well, so even though it's kind of shocking and it's a really big, kind of brutal twist, I think my readers are going to be okay with it because I've set it up pretty well. And I really do want it to happen because it's kind of a crucial thing for this whole book. So I have to get there, and it's a little bit weird that this thing even happens because I'll have to the protagonists they're basically going to have to do something that would normally be stupid. So when you want your protagonist to do something stupid, you have to kind of make it seem okay. So you might have to, someone has to lie to her, someone has to plant false information, she has to believe something wrong. This is often like in romance books when the protagonist confesses her love, or is about to go confess her love to the love interest, and then someone else tells her a lie about the love interest and she freaks out and runs away, something kind of like that. So my protagonist has to do something not exactly out of character, it's something she wants to do, but they're great stakes, so it's taking a really big risk to do these things, and I have to make it okay because I have to make it happen. So I might do some things like there might be drugs or alcohol involved, there might be some things that lower her resistance or her critical thinking, which can be fine. But so I'm building up to this thing, and the problem right now is that I haven't really figured out what happened, so I can't sit down and write it. So what I have to do is spend 20 minutes, an hour, however long it takes, and sit down and figure out how am I going to make that thing happen, how am I going to get to the midpoint. So that's basically just a little bit of research, a little bit of like brainstorming and mapping out potential scenes until I kind of have a feel for what I think might happen, and then I will have to get to the midpoint. There will be this pivotal shift. So that's where I am right now. I'm gonna keep writing for a day. We'll see how far I get today. Like I said, I feel like the resistance of quitting because I don't know what happens next. The thing I have to keep doing is every day sit down and map out the next step before I go in to the writing and hopefully crank out my words. The last session I did a couple days ago, I went through this already. I fixed the plot. I wrote like 6,000 words really quickly, and that was pretty cool actually. So anyway, I'll talk to you later. So yesterday I was talking about how I was a little bit frustrated and stuck because I didn't really know what happens next, but how that's kind of part of the process. What I managed to do, I think yesterday, was figure out what happens next. So I said I was writing towards the midpoint, and I kind of know what happens, and by what happens I just mean that I had figured out the plot event, but I didn't actually know the scene. So the difference is the scene is the surroundings, the environment, like what it actually looks like, and if you don't know what that looks like, you can't write it. So I was kind of stuck because not only did I not know what it looked like, but I didn't know what the 2 or 3 chapters before, I didn't know how to get there. That's basically what I figured out. So even though I didn't do a lot of writing, I only wrote 1,200 words or so. That 1,200 words is a really detailed scene outline for the next 3 chapters. So I kind of did figure out how to get from where I was, and that's the really important part, because that's how you get over the feelingness of stuck. If you don't know what's happening or you feel demotivated, it's probably because you don't know what happens next. So I'm actually up in Pai. We took a little road trip and we're in northern Thailand at this really nice, very nature outdoor, it's like a little hippie town. So today we're going to go explore and see a giant Buddha and maybe an elephant park and a couple other things, but then I'm going to find a little place to do some writing. And I think now that I have my detailed chapter outline for the next few scenes, I think I'll be able to pretty quickly, I hope, write 5,000 or 6,000 words, and the only problem is if I'm allowing myself a whole day just to do that, when I get stuck and I need to figure out what happens, and then I feel okay, I wrote 1,200 words, that's pretty good, I'll just take a day off, that could make me run out of time. If I'm trying to finish this NaNoWrimo book in a month, I think it's a really good process for me. I like it a lot, where I do a day of hard writing and then a day of, okay, what's next, plotting and outlining a little bit more. And it works for me because instead of doing, I could just be doing 2,000 words a day or something like that, which would be more consistent. But I kind of am liking the routine, or kind of the balance between having a planning day and having a writing day, because they're both really important. And having the planning day kind of makes me feel unstuck, whereas with a writing day, if I do a lot of writing, I feel satisfied and motivated, eager, but then I feel the demotivation because I don't really want to get back into it and I don't know what happens next. And that's the really important part, is to sit down and figure out the next steps. What I haven't been able to do yet is figure out the next steps and then just immediately carry on writing. Eventually that's what I would like to kind of figure out. This whole process is kind of I said somewhere in this video series, sitting with the discomfort when you get used to your areas of resistance so that you can learn to identify personal, I would say writing weaknesses, but that's not really it. It's almost psychological factors. A lot of writing, I saw someone post recently in one of the Facebook groups I'm in, she can write 160,000 words or 150,000 words a month or something like that, which is a lot, but really, like, I know I'm capable of writing 5,000 words a day. I've done it before. The reason I don't do it consistently is because I don't know exactly what happens, and I also need to take these breaks to do the planning and the outlining and stuff. Anyway, so that's kind of where I am now. I'm going to finish this video maybe later today or maybe tomorrow when I actually finish writing to the midpoint. And when I do, I'll tell you a little bit more about what those scenes look like. And now I'm actually behind because this is only, like, I'm still writing in the midpoint, and now I think it's the 16th or 17th or something. But I'm getting close to probably 40,000 words, so I'm definitely on track to win NaNoWriMo, but I would like to have finished the rough draft and gotten to the end point of my novel. I'm not sure I'll actually be able to do that in 30 days, but we'll see how it goes. Hey there, so here's another update. It's actually a couple days later. I think I mentioned I was on a trip in northern Thailand. We took the bus back yesterday. I'm feeling kind of sick today, but I wanted to give you an update on what's going on. I said I'd make a next video when I finish to the midpoint, and I learned kind of two big things I'll share with you. The first is that you have to be willing to be flexible with the plot. Sometimes it's true the story does come to you. Normally I think it's when you notice mistakes. So you feel something's wrong with this story. You don't know what it is, you just know the story isn't good enough yet, which can be really demotivating. It's hard to just press through that and keep writing if you know the story is wrong. So what I tend to do is, procrastinate, take a few days off, avoid the writing, which isn't always the best thing. Like, you have to, like I said earlier, you have to sit down and be comfortable with the discomfort until the answers arrive. Like, you have to keep digging the hole, and that's kind of felt like what I felt like I was doing the last couple of days. I was trying to get into my outline, I was trying to do the writing, but instead I just kept digging the hole deeper, and I didn't really know what happened. So I think I told you I thought I had like a 3-step chapter that got to my midpoint. I realized that's not quite the case, because the thing that I want to have happen is a really serious dramatic event, and I have to put it in the right place and have other things going on. And then the thing that I want to have happen next, like after the midpoint. Today I started looking at, okay, I kind of know what the midpoint is, what's going to happen after the midpoint, what are the next 3 sequences of dominoes or whatever to take me further in the story. So I thought about like what happens then, and there was just a few other scenes that were missing or that had to be set up, and it wasn't quite right. So I kind of had been playing with scene ideas. A couple of scenes that I didn't really know where to fit in, but I thought should kind of be there, was an underwater dive, because a lot of the city of Alexandria in Egypt is actually underwater. All of the pre-Ptolemaic, the pre-Pharaoh old stuff, way before Alexander the Great, is underwater now, which is really interesting. That's really old stuff. So I kind of wanted them to go on an underwater dive quest to find something, and I kind of also wanted them to break into a national antiquities museum and find something else, but those were kind of 2 different quest scenes, and I didn't know which one to do. I also wanted them to have another fight with those dragon brothers I think I mentioned earlier, based on the myth of Cadmus in Greece, but they want revenge for her killing Athena. So I want kind of another small battle or small fight. Then they had to be relaxed enough to kind of have a party and get drunk, so bad things can happen, which I talked a little about earlier. I can't make my protagonist do things that would be stupid, but if she's inebriated, it makes it a little bit easier for her to make mistakes without the readers questioning her judgment quite as much. But then I also want this major apocalyptic scene where Hera or Zeus floods all of Egypt and just, sends hundreds of hunters, which are my angel guys. They're like Zeus's warriors. They come down and they're just, destroying the city because my protagonist and the allies have already activated something or found something. So I'm kind of just playing around with ideas, but they need to go on 2 different quests to get the thing and activate the thing that Zeus knows is dangerous, so he comes down and smites everybody. But before that happens, she has to have this really personal drunk scene where other things can happen. I'm not going to reveal like everything to you, because these are the really big twists in my novel, but that's kind of the sequence that has to be set up. And then the breakthrough I had, if it's a little breakthrough, I was actually just relaxing and watching YouTube's Origin. Origin is YouTube Red's new sci-fi thriller, kind of an alien possession series, which is really good. And in the series, there's a little critical piece of an idea that I can use for my own, which was she needs to find this emerald tablet. And I was picturing this big thing, and then maybe she finds it, and then Zeus breaks it, so she doesn't learn how to read it. But I also kind of wanted them to restore the Lighthouse of Alexandria. But like I said, there were kind of two different quest things going on. But the way it works in Origin, the way it can work in mine, on the one hand, there's the tablet or the gemstone, or in Origin, it's the chip or whatever. On the one hand, there's that, but then they also need to build a computer to read the chip. So they need the two things, and that's why I can use those two scenes I had kind of thought out already. On the one hand, they go to get the emerald. On the other hand, they need to restore the Lighthouse of Alexandria because it's a giant microscope or machine to read all of the information, all the knowledge of the world contained on this little gemstone. So anyway, those were the two pieces that I was missing. Now I get to write those. I was kind of demotivating because now is already the 20th. I only have 10 more days, and I haven't still reached the midpoint yet. So I'm pretty far behind, and it sucks when you're trying to write forward and you keep creating new scenes. That's not always the best thing to do, but the thing I wanted to say mostly in this video is that sometimes you have to be flexible with the plot. My plot probably won't actually follow my own plot.26 chapter outline completely. It's kind of okay because this is a third book, so it doesn't totally have to hit all those events in exactly the right place. It is still really important to get the scenes in the right place for the maximum emotional impact. So the right scenes in the right places to make the readers feel more. And so that's kind of a balance between a little bit light, happy scenes, a little bit dark scenes. And the kind of shitty thing is, like, after I write this midpoint, which might be later than the actual midpoint of the book, but it's kind of the like really shocking, the personal motivation factor. The protagonist has something happen or learn something that changes everything that she understands, and it makes her deeply committed to fulfilling her plot or moving forward. So that's going to happen. A huge apocalyptic thing is going to happen where Egypt and a lot of cities in the world will be wiped out. Then there's going to be, I figured out like the next few things. So then there's going to be a worldwide plague. They go back to safety now that they've tried but failed in this mission. They learned some things, but they didn't ultimately bring back the things that they wanted. She has been introduced to Hera. Zeus has figured out where she was. And so then we're getting towards the next big thing, which will be kind of the final battle scene. I'll talk more about that in the next video. I'm going to probably wrap up this little video series, or this video here, because I'm kind of like, even though I haven't quite hit the midpoint yet, what I expect is happening right now is I'm figuring out the next 2 or 3 scenes or chapters that are going to have to go before the midpoint, but then I'm going to write through them, because right after the midpoint, like I said, all this other stuff happens, which will probably take me, you know, a few chapters past the midpoint, and then I'll be kind of writing towards the second pinch point. So after the midpoint, there'll be kind of a huge battle scene, which could actually qualify as the second pinch point, the second battle, but probably won't, because then they're going to regroup. They're going to plan the next stage of attack, which is to go after Hera directly and find, they know where she's going to be because there's this festival in Greece that always happens every 60 years. So they're assuming she's going to be there. They're going to go and try to kill her, basically. And that will be the next big battle scene, which could actually be the second pinch point as well. So it's kind of like 2 battle scenes followed by, you know, a resting and replanning going to happen after the midpoint. And I'll probably write through those a little bit more, and then tell you more about it in the next video, which is going to be actually about the second pinch point. So once I've done that and I've kind of gone all the way through that, I'll make a video about that process, and we'll take it from there.